Hello, my name's Gary Mount. I'm here at Terhune Orchards in Princeton, New Jersey. I'm very pleased to introduce my friend Coles Roberts, who's presenting a story of apple peelers and their development over the past 200 years, or as he would say, apple parers. I'm standing in front of a modern, compact apple orchard, dwarf apple trees, not like the trees of years ago, but I stood here in particular to emphasize that Coles has always been a very progressive guy. He's a retired apple grower from New Jersey. He has an interest in apple peelers and has a tremendous collection. He's going to show you all about them. It's a story you're not going to see anyplace else. So I hope you enjoy it very much.
Gary said we were going to be in for a treat. Well, I had a treat a little while ago with that apple pie. And he said we were innovative. Well, I appreciate that. We thought we were. I come from a long line of apple growers. But you know, to the best of my knowledge, none of them ever had an apple parer. Well, that has changed. So, well, how many of you have never seen an apple paired with a mechanical device? Raise your hands. Okay, you're going to see some now. Well, apples have always been a very important food, especially when the country was young, because apples will keep for a long time in their natural state. The ones they want to keep real long, they would dry. But first they had to be, of course they kept some in cider too, but that's another story. But before being dried, they had to be pared, and that was no small job. They would have apple bees where friends, family, neighbors would gather and spend the evening paring apples. It was all done by hand. Well, they needed a quicker way to do it, and that's where Yankee ingenuity came into play. The first invention of an apple parer that I'm aware of was by a 13-year-old boy in the 1770s. And I learned about him in school because he later invented the cotton gin. Eli Whitney's first invention was an apple parer at the age of 13. Probably the first thing he did, and others, there are surely others working on it, was to impale an apple on a fork that he could rotate and held his knife against it. Now this doesn't work very well. I can pare an apple better this way than without it, but anybody's handy with a paring knife with these circles around me, because the blade needs a guide to keep it at the right depth. Well, the technique they needed was already in use in a tool that was in common use at the time, the carpenter's plane. I don't think many apples were paired with the carpenter's plane. That wasn't a very good job either. But it did provide the technique. So they used that technique and made an apple head that had the blade and the guide, and they worked that over the apple as they turned it. And that worked pretty well, but it has to be held in exactly the right place, the high point of the apple. And when they were in a hurry because they had so much to do, that wasn't easy. So they attached the paring head to an arm. So it was always in the right place. Doesn't that do a nice job? Then in colonial days, there. They would go to the local tinsmith, and he would make them up something like this, that they would push down through the apple. They'll take the core out and cut it in sections. You can get something like this now. It's a flat thing. It works real well. Well, all of these, the early ones, were all homemade, no two alike. And then companies began to manufacture them. And some of them were mounted on boards that they sat on called straddle boards. Then in the mid-1800s, cast iron parers began to appear. Now these were not only more durable, but they were geared. The spindle turned faster, so they were faster. And the paring arm was attached to a turntable that took it around the apple. But when it's only halfway around, the apple's pared. But they have to finish the cycle, and it takes just as long to do that when they're not doing anything as it did to pare the apple. So to waste any time when they had mountains of apples to pare was not acceptable. So they did some other things. Now this one, now it's paring. When the arm's halfway around the apple's pared, the arm lifts off and quickly comes back a little bit quicker. Now this is a straddle board. You would sit on this. Now it's pairing, and when it's finished, snaps back, ready for the next. Apple pears are wonderful examples of men's inventiveness and ingenuity, trying to find quicker, better ways to do something. Now this one, now it's pairing. When the arm's halfway around the apple's paired, the arm lifts off, gets out of the way. You take the apple off, put on another one, continue pairing the same direction, pairs the other one on the way back. Well, a lot of people were buying apple pears, but a lot of companies were making them, so there was a lot of competition. So they had to improve them. Well, this basic one works well. You put the apple on, turn the crank and pair, but then you take the apple off by hand. While the apple's juicy, your hands can get sticky. If you have a lot to do, it can be a real mess. So they made an improvement. You see this arm coming around just behind the apple and pushes it off. Well, that was a lot better. And you know, there's over 200 patents on apple pears. Now, some of them didn't have a crank that had a lever that works back and forth. Now, a lot of these have names. This was called the Lightning. It was patented in 1863. Yeah, okay. A smaller one. Now I should put this over here. That's what's it on. No. What's the matter here? Okay. Well, this works real well. Want me to do another one so you can get a better picture of that? Okay.
I want one of those.
It works real well, but you have to know when to stop. Now, after a while, I'll get something and use for a darning egg. You know, a lot of people don't know what a darning egg is. You know, you put it in the sock when you're mending it. But so you could use this for a darning egg. And when you finish mending socks, you can still eat the apple. Well, they made improvements to the Lightning, and in 1884, they patented the new Lightning. Where am I? Yeah. Very similar, but it had a push-off. Now this is one of my favorites. Watch real close. Whoop. Okay. I've pared 3 apples in 5 seconds with that. Sears Roebuck sold these in 1908 for 63 cents. I've been offered $1.63 for that. In about the 1870s, a man named Scott in Newark, New Jersey invented a peach pair. Now, a lot of women were making their livings with their paring knives. So when these devices came along that could do what they were doing, they were concerned about it. Well, he demonstrated his pair at a cannery. 200 women took their paring knives and chased him out of the building. Well, this is a peach pear that has prongs that grab the pit of a peach and a circular blade that rotates as it goes around the peach. You can pair an apple with a peach pear, but you can't pair a peach with an apple pear. So it works pretty good. Now this is a complex device. There are 8 gears on that. Now most of these are antiques, and some of them are hard to come by. There's usually a couple hundred apple pears on eBay. Most of them are new, but there's usually 1 or 2. This is Sinclair Scott on eBay. Now, while I'm doing another kind of fruit, this was a device for citrus, so for extracts. So they would take thin slices off the peel so to make extracts out of it. This is called the Success. So they probably struggled for a long time to get it to work, and finally success. And it makes more passes. It comes back, it does it again, you keep doing that, and you keep getting these peelings you can use for extract. If I do this too long, I'll have a mess. I want to do some lemon sometime and make some homemade lemon ice cream. The best of its kind was made in Reading, Pennsylvania, Reading Hardware Company. They made a lot of the hardware for the Empire State Building. And they came out in the 1870s, they came out with a new model almost every year. And this was called the Reading 78. And it was the ultimate. It's the finest. This is the most popular hand-cranked apple pair of all time. Just like that. There is a reproduction of this being made today, and it is a good one, made from the original patterns. Another one that is still being made is a lathe, called lathe type, because it has a big screw like a lathe. Now, this is a modern one that has a suction cup that doesn't work on my surface here. Look at that apple paring. There was a lady in New York State pared an apple with one continuous paring 173 feet long. I didn't really believe that, but it was in Robert Ripley's column, so I told about it. Well, I put this program on for a group of apple growers from all over the country. And afterwards, the man from New York State came up and said that was his daughter, and her record still stands. So that did happen. You know, there's an old saying, if a girl throws an apple paring over her shoulder, when it lands, it'll form the initials of the boy she will marry. There are no young ones here. I was wondering if anybody want to try it. Does anybody want to make a change? Well, this not only pairs, it cores, there's the core, and it slices. This is the blade that does the slicing and the coring. If I took that off or just turned it down, like I have this one, you can pare a potato with it. If you pare a potato with that blade in place, you get something you can use for home fries. And with every potato, you get one round French fry, the core. Well, in the 70s or 80s, commercial pares began to appear. These were heavier, more durable machines. Just 3 turns of the crank, and not only pares, it takes the core out. Well, these were real good, and a lot of these were used. Several companies manufactured them. But what they really wanted was something they can use with an outside power source. So pares with a multiple spindles on a thing that rotates began to appear. Now, I mounted this on an industrial single sewing machine, basically. You can use one foot, the other foot, both feet, however you want to do it. I don't think many apples were paired with foot power, but it's fun to demonstrate. But with multiple spindles, while it's paring one apple, you can load another. So this is a continuous operation. So they would belt these to a line shaft overhead, and canners would have dozens of these machines. But you know, I'm still putting the apple on by hand. So the next step, now I don't want to get I will get Gary's floor messed up, but I'll spare it as much as I can. The next one was the self-loading device. Sometimes you can get a little piece of skin or something in there and it won't work. There's a lot going on there. Anybody likes something mechanical, take a look at that. But of course, that's only one apple at a time. Then canners began to use bigger machines. This machine, this is an industrial, commercial apple parer. This will do 80 to 90 apples a minute. One person would feed the 4 cups. One person would feed all 4 cups, 2 at a time. And you feed that machine all day, you dream about it all night. It'll do big apples. It'll do little apples. It'll do an apple crossways. Then you get an apple with a hole in it that still has the core. There are 4 blades on that. One, of course, pairs it, one takes the core out, and there's a blade on each end that takes most of the skin out of the basin on each end. Very little hand trimming has to be done with these. Now, the old-timers were ingenious. If they could make a device that could save them a few minutes, they had places to use those minutes. And this slicer, those blades are sharp. I like to know where the first aid kit is when I use this thing. I'm not allowed to use this in the house. Okay. Now, you know, a lot of these early ones, they pair, but they don't take the core out. So there's all kinds of devices to take a core out. And most of them are like a tube. Well, it can be hard to get the core out of the tube. Well, this one has a little spring in there. It makes it a little easier. Okay. This one has 2 arms that do their thing. First it pairs the apple, then the other arm comes in and does its thing. I'm not allowed to use this in the house either. Well, we shipped canning apples to a cannery in Winchester, Virginia, and they did have machines like this. This is still being made, but now there's also an automatic. This does 80 to 90 a minute. There's an automatic machine that does 120 apples a minute, and that company had 30 of those machines. And during the season, when they ran 3 shifts, they pared over 4 million apples every day. And there are canneries like that all over the country. But the principle of this first parer is still being used on the most modern. It has never been changed, never been improved. It was perfect. So that's the apple pear story.
For a very
my hands.
Don't worry about that. On behalf of Princeton Agricultural Association, we'd like to present you a plaque thanking you for your presentation. Very informative. Thank you
Thanks
very
much. That's real kind of you. Thank you.
Can we have a round?
Okay, good. Okay.